If you care about your manifestation actually moving, not just thinking about it, not just visualizing it, but genuinely feeling like things are moving, this is important. I'm going to show you how to stop trying to force your dream life and instead tune into the version of it that already exists. Because most people don't realize that when you keep pushing and nothing seems to change, you don't just feel frustrated, you quietly start questioning yourself. And that's usually where people start drifting away from their own vision. And this is not another raise your vibration and hope conversation. This is practical, real life behaviour. And it might help you approach manifestation in a very different way. So let me start with something that might actually take a bit of pressure off, yeah? So what if your manifestation isn't missing? Like, what if it's not working, but you're just not fully tuned in yet? You know, like when you're driving and the radio station goes a bit fuzzy for a second. The song didn't disappear, the station didn't shut down, you're just slightly off the dial. And what do you do when that happens? You don't panic. You don't assume the whole system is broken. You just adjust it and you barely even think about it. That's the part I want you to see with manifestation, because somewhere along the way, we've been taught that if something isn't showing up yet, it must mean something like that we're blocked or we're behind or that we're doing it wrong, that maybe this works for others but not for me. Now, this is where it gets really interesting, because most people don't lose alignment because they're trying too hard. They lose it because they slowly stop feeling connected to what they desire, and it starts feeling further away, like something out there instead of something that's actually unfolding right now. You start speaking about it differently. Instead of when it happens, it becomes if it happens. Instead of I'm building this, it becomes I'm thinking about this. And words have power. And that emotional step back, that tiny shift in your energy, changes everything. Because manifestation is about ownership. If something feels like it's yours, truly yours, you move differently around it. You don't overanalyze it. You don't tiptoe around it. You don't constantly seek reassurance about it. You relate to it as if it belongs in your life. But if something feels uncertain or temporary, you move cautiously. You hesitate, you second guess. Not because you're weak, but because you're protecting yourself from disappointment. And that's human, but it's also a frequency. So the question isn't, am I trying hard enough? The question is, does this desire still feel like mine? Because that feeling is the dial. The version of you who already has what you want isn't more gifted. They're not more spiritually advanced. They expect differently. They carry themselves differently. They speak about what they're doing differently because it's actually happening. Not because life is perfect for them, but because their internal setting is different. And that internal setting influences everything, okay? So instead of asking, why isn't this happening yet? Try asking, okay, what version of me am I operating in right now? Am I operating as the version who believes my desire is possible, or the version who is preparing for it not to happen? Because that is the dial, your frequency. And sometimes it only just takes a small adjustment for things to start coming through way clearer, and clarity changes everything. So if identity is the dial, and this is where it gets really interesting, because most people think they either believe or they don't believe. But that's not actually how it works. Throughout the day, you're switching identities constantly. For example, someone might ask for a general chit chat, what are you building? And you might slightly water it down, not because you don't care, but because you don't want to look naive, for example. Or when you're out and about and you're about to introduce yourself confidently, you kind of might tone yourself down just a touch. Or when you open a document you've been meaning to finish, but instead you tidy something else first. That's not you getting in your own way. That's just you slipping back into what feels familiar. And I want you to really see this, because you're not lacking belief. You're just defaulting to the version of you that matches your current results, because that version feels safe. And the thing is, frequency isn't about feeling up or high vibe all the time. It's about repetition. It's which version of you practice more often. If most of your decisions come from the hopeful version, you stay in hope. But if more of your decisions come from the expecting version, you start feeling something different. Yeah? So instead of asking, do I believe enough? Ask instead, if this were already unfolding for me, what would this version of me do right now? And then you do that. Answer the message or make a decision from that place. Walk into that room from that place. Speak from that place, because that is tuning your frequency. And this is where something interesting happens, because when you start moving from that slightly more decided version of you, reality starts responding differently. But not overnight, of course, but in small ways, like conversations feel easier. People just seem to be responding differently, and there might even be more politeness. You say things and they land really well. Someone replies really quickly to an email. An opportunity feels less intimidating than it used to be. And what's really funny is most people think this is luck, but it isn't. It's feedback, because the universe responds to how you're showing up. Okay? When you stop hesitating internally, people feel that. And this is the part that really matters. These early signs are subtle. They're not fireworks. They're just little confirmations, little signals from the universe that say, keep moving like this. And the mistake people make is waiting for some kind of massive sign. But manifestation doesn't really shout at first. Manifestation whispers. And if you keep moving from that identity, the identity of your desire, those whispers get louder. And that is your frequency strengthening and starting to show up in your reality. Okay? Now, this is usually where something else starts happening, because once you see things begin to move, there's a new kind of pressure that starts showing up. You might start thinking, okay, I need to keep this going. And suddenly you're watching it more closely. Try not to mess it up. Try not to lose the momentum. And honestly, that is so normal. When something finally starts working, it's natural to pay more attention, to feel like you need to manage it carefully. But most people don't realize that the more you try to control the momentum, the more heavy it starts to feel. And the people who are generally in flow, not just in manifestation, but in anything, they aren't frantic when things start working. They're steady. Think about athletes, for example. They're not overthinking every movement. They trust the rhythm. A musician on stage isn't forcing every note. They're listening and responding, and that's the difference. Pressure keeps checking if it's still working, but precision stays focused on the next clean step. And a version of you who already lives your manifestation, they're not rushing to prove it's real. They're not trying to protect it every single second, because they're embodying it, because they're no longer arguing with where they're going. And then everything starts to compound. So tuning in doesn't mean trying harder to maintain momentum. It means moving without being all tensed and stressed. Less of, is this still working, and more of, what's my next clean move? And when you operate like that, momentum starts feeling natural and more like alignment. And that kind of momentum is the kind that actually lasts. Your manifestation doesn't feel real when you're moving from the unsure version of you. It starts feeling real when your everyday choices come from calm certainty. And the real risk isn't that your desires never unfold, but rather settling for a smaller version of yourself because it feels safer, and you don't want to do that. Choose from the version of you who already trusts your desires unfolding, and let that version guide your move and the next one after that. So if this landed for you today, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out, and drop a comment below to let me know that you're stepping into the frequency of your desire today. Thank you.